Welcome to this latest edition of the Delivery Profits, brought to you by the Delivery.world, together with Avico Super Crunch, the ultimate fries for delivery. We're so grateful for all of you out there who tune in regularly for this podcast. Without you, we're just a bunch of guys and girls talking to each other in a recording studio. I'm Peter Backman, and today, together with John Borzacchiello and our special guest Keith Bird, as usual, we'll talk about delivery in general and ways to make it accessible and profitable. And no doubt we'll get on to other topics too, as we try to get a deep understanding of the forces shaping this rapidly evolving sector. But before we get on to that, John, have you noticed anything particular in the world this week?
Well, it's nearly Christmas, Peter, as we sit here in Waterloo with the Christmas tree up.
Yes, I thought you might be referring to another event happening on the other side of the Atlantic.
Ah, Mr. Trump. Was that a surprise in the end or not really?
Well, listening to all the media chatter, absolutely. In this country, I think depending on which media you're listening to in the States or in other countries, you may have come to a different conclusion. But it points up elements of groupthink, I think.
Definitely. If you look at he won it fair and square by a lot, in that, especially in those swing states. So it goes back to the media and how they report things, doesn't it? It depends what media you listen to. Quite interestingly, I don't normally watch BBC News, but when I flicked on BBC News, they actually found it hard to say that he'd won it, which was quite interesting.
Yes, because commentators have an investment in what they actually have said in the past. And when it turns out the other way, then they've got to, in a sense, justify what they've said.
Definitely. So we haven't got that long start of the new year. He'll become president. He'll move into the White House for the second term. Let's see what he brings to America.
And to the world.
And to the world, definitely.
Okay, so let me sort of get the show on the road with some words that I prepared earlier. As my grandfather used to say, you're never too old. How true that is. Though the other question is, you're never too young. At one end, you face cognitive decline, and at the other, you face inexperience. Both lead to decision-making that is based on inadequate foundations. In the middle, though, when you're neither too old nor too young, it's a different story. You have the facts, you have the right amount of experience, you have the drive and the energy to make a difference. Except, of course, that is not, or not usually, the story. We all of us make suboptimal decisions, and to a greater or lesser extent, we rely on our colleagues, our suppliers, our customers, our clients, whoever, and we rely on the hard facts that we come up against to lead us onto the right path, if we're lucky. I say all this because making strategic decisions about delivery is not easy. There are so many unknowns and so many moving parts. And then there is received wisdom and groupthink to beguile us and lead us in the wrong direction. Under those circumstances, is it better to be old and full of experience, though possibly of the wrong sort, or is it better to be young and enthusiastic and in tune with the modern vibes of restaurant delivery? Either way, we'll make mistakes. George Santayana, the Spanish-American philosopher and novelist, wrote in 1905 in his book, The Life of Reason, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. On that basis, we should study the past and, crucially, draw conclusions from it so that we don't make the same old mistakes." And I agree with the view that we should find out what happened in the old days so that we can make better decisions in the days ahead. John, does that strike a chord with you?
I think that's the most complex introduction maybe you've done, Peter, so far.
Okay, I can make it. Next time I'll try and beat you.
Old and new. That's what I took out of that there, of the classic old delivery versus new delivery, aggregator versus in-house. Do you need delivery? Don't you need delivery?
Well, those are questions that we've addressed in the past, and they're still relevant, absolutely. So I think it's probably time to bring in our guest, Keith Bird. Keith is a recognised sector leader. He's an advisor, a non-exec, with senior management roles in the past in Yum Brands, in the Nando's family when they owned GBK, Marugame, Udon, and others. So he comes with a real wealth of experience. So welcome, Keith. So a question to you is, with all that experience, How far back do your memories of delivery go?
Thanks very much, and great to be here with you all. I suppose these aren't my memories, but I do know that the first pizza was delivered, I think, in 1889 to
No, you must be wrong.
Queen Margarita. Now, I don't know. What is unclear is who delivered it. Was it Francomanca? Was it Pizza Pilgrims? Was it Pizza Hut or Domino's? But 1889. And that sort of gives you an idea of people have always wanted that. And that was to Queen Margarita in Naples. But obviously, if you roll it forward to when, the first delivery started taking place. So Pizza Hut, and I joined soon after this, brought delivery over in 1994. And Domino's had brought it over a few years earlier when they opened their first store in Luton for all the Luton Town Hatter fans out there. You guys often talk about football, so I just thought I would throw that in there for the Luton Town Massive.
Well, for Luton and, of course, for Domino's, Pizza Hut, not to forget anyone, these were the ones that started delivery, weren't they? And again, we so often speak about the trailblazers out there. Domino's is really one that came, they don't have restaurants, they are a delivery concept or collection.
But Keith's point is that actually delivery started getting on for 100 years before they started. And even before they came along, we had delivery in this country. What's your first experience of delivery?
My first experience was growing up as a child at home on a Saturday evening, having a local Chinese or Indian delivered. 1 week we'd have it delivered, and it was probably once a month, once every 2 months that we'd have something. And if we didn't have it delivered, I can remember going with my dad and collecting it from the local Indian restaurant where you sat in the front and they had the poppadoms they gave you to start with, then you'd take it home.
Those are some of my sort of memories as well. So the important issue is coming back to Keith's point, is that delivery is not new.
Yeah, it's been around for a long while, but I always like to go back to what's the real customer need and trying to really get under the surface of that. And what you're talking about is sort of like, it's a meal replacement, it's a treat at home. And although I think that has been, the very essence and kernel of why delivery started, and lots of independents would do that, I think the need has probably broadened. I mean, obviously it's about, it's convenience, it's speed, it's value. They're the sort of key attributes. But actually, when you look at the customer need, I think it's sort of developed as our incomes relatively have increased if you look over a long time period. So yes, it is meal replacement. It's sort of the family tree. It's dad's night off cooking or mum's night off cooking. It's having friends round and being really spontaneous. Are we going to go out? No, let's stay in. Or even, it's the real sort of push of movie night, which is Netflix, Amazon, Disney, whereas it used to be go out and get your DVD from Blockbuster for those perhaps.
So would you
remember that? So, and celebration as well. And so they're all different occasions, and it's just how do you link what you're offering.
Is it convenience then, Keith, that you see it as?
Yeah, I think yes. And if we go back to sort of the Domino's or the Pizza Hut, sort of in times back, it was all about, can you get your leaflets in front of the customer at home? And convenience was, how quickly can I get to that? I mean, I remember even, we'd always try and get the fridge magnets, because if you could get the fridge magnet with your number and get it stuck on the fridge, then every time, am I opening the fridge or am I calling for something? That was convenience and options and making it drill into people's heads. I think there was even one which, I can't remember if it was Domino's, but press for pizza, and apparently it was then linking through, whether that's true or not. But it's all about, do you make it easy for people? And in the early days where, yes, it was pizza operators who had to trailblaze, really had to do that to drive trial, and get customers coming back, repeating, etc., versus Chinese or Indian. It wasn't mainstream. But now, of course, everyone has, it's on the aggregators, and we're all encouraged to go back and look at that and all the nudging that drives frequency as well. But it's not frequency of the brand, it's frequency of the aggregator.
So 30 years ago then, when these guys came over, they'd also have from the UK culture of what's this food? What's this food that's coming over? There's this Indian and Chinese and pizza and this foreign food, as people would see it in the UK.
Yeah, I think, this goes back to the way humans behave. The more we have traveled, the more we are curious, the more we are keen to try new things. And I think that's a wonderful thing because it also broadens our minds, makes us more open to try new things and more accepting. So I love the aspect of travel. I think the way our foods have exploded in terms of different varieties, the Vietnamese, all the sort of regional Indian foods, etc., have just made it far more exciting as a result of that. So I think, there are more occasions and more opportunities to try new stuff. And I think for the consumers, they're customers, they're sort of thinking about, I'm curious, I'm going to try that. And obviously the aggregators work hard on that. And as the brand owner, you're saying, don't try others, stay with me, and drive in frequency. But actually, it's also about the frequency of occasion as well. So,
interestingly as well, Keith, you were in the early days, but I want to touch base where I first met you, and that's going back 10, 12 years when you were part of that Nando's GBK family, Robbie Eindhoven, and I can remember me being the young sales guy going in, and here's the FX chart. John, look how much the currency's changed. Can I have a bigger case size? And we had lots of banter,
it was fun,
to be fair, over the years. Yeah. But you guys and GBK, and I can remember going to the offices lots of times, having meetings with you, with the supply chain guys. You were like the trailblazer then for delivery as we all now know it, or the start of that journey, I guess.
Yeah, well, we absolutely embraced it. So I work with Alistair Murdoch, who's great, and because he came out of Pizza Hut as well as myself, you understood that actually here's a different market, here's something that's additive. Now, we were still finding our way. I mean, I think it was the extent that I think in the early days we even had Will Shue doing a number of our deliveries. So, everyone was learning during those days. And it's fantastic to see what an amazing business he's built up and the way the whole industry has gone. But, again, about getting the business model right as well, because we had a number of startups that didn't even engage with us, would be buying our product and then delivering it themselves. And obviously they weren't taking a commission from us. They were adding on, they were there for a very short space of time. So the market adjusts because you've got to get a business model that works. And that business model has to sort of deliver something that is fair for the aggregators and fair for the restaurants as well. And obviously all these sessions talk about that as well.
What interests me is the change that we've seen over the last however many years, 10, possibly 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm not going back pre the delivery platforms into the earlier stage, but from when they came along, Deliveroo and then Just Eat and Uber Eats in this country to today, if you put those two side by side, forget the intervening years, put those side by side, what lessons is it possible to learn from that change? So I guess, what did it look like? What does it look like today? What are those changes and what do those lessons tell us? I think that's something which I find could be an interesting exercise.
All the aggregators have upped their game tremendously. I mean, there are lessons because in the Pizza Hut, Domino's days, everything was about KPI measures, under 30s, absolutely. From the point you order to getting your food in your hand had to be less than 30 minutes. Absolutely. You had drive times that initially were only 8 minutes, but then got cut down to 5 minutes because you could, with the better service standards, drive more repeat business as well. And so you see the aggregators going on that journey, but obviously they've done lots more than that. And also, double drops for the efficiency because it would always cost you to get a bike on the road, etc. But I think what they've done is they've made the customer journey immensely easier, a much, much easier way in which I'm curious, I think I'm hungry, I'm going to have a look, okay, go through, click, etc. So actually that whole process, and I think even Domino's did follow your driver, etc. So all those things have found a way of making people feel more comfortable, more trust, and a much easier proposition for the customer to order, to come back, to give feedback, to feel as if they have control, which actually was always the thing in the early days. The control people would come for takeaway, and those that were ready to pay for that service. I think the dynamic now is everybody feels like they've got control. They can see their delivery drive. They know where their order's at, and therefore everyone has become normalised and safe on that. So the customer journey is inexplicably better, smoother, easier. And I think then for the restaurants, that customer journey has gone through a massive change as well, which we can talk about. But
Yes, okay. I think actually that's quite a good point to break off just for a second and to say that if you're enjoying the show, please consider supporting us by leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing us. Your ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help more people discover our content. Plus, it's the best way to show your appreciation for the hard work the Delivery.World team, the Avico team, and our fabulous guests put into each and every episode. So go ahead, hit that 5-star button, the full instructions in the show notes, and let's continue with today's fantastic episode. And I'm really interested in the way that you've been able to highlight question to you, the major difference between then and now is the customer journey. Am I reading you correct that it is the difference or it is one of a number of differences?
one of the differences, because I think it's made it much easier for customers. And obviously people have a relatively higher disposable income. People have now got into this habit. Lifestyles have changed as well. Those days we didn't have Netflix, and it was much easier or it's more difficult to go out to Blockbuster or, pick up something that way. So I think consumers are buying lots more, and that's great because the much wider variety of foods, and also they've got a much higher trust that what they order will arrive on time. It will be hot, it will be good. And if there's any problems, they get resolved by the aggregators, which is incredibly strong for building trust and then driving frequency.
You mentioned, Keith, there, Netflix and Blockbuster. So
we may need to describe what that was.
Well, of course, so Blockbuster Videos, for all our youngsters out there, is where you used to go. Have a look round a shop at a video or DVD. Used to hire it out for 24 hours.
We're going to have to define DVD.
Well, DVD as well. So anyway, we'll forget that bit. But going back to the Blockbuster Netflix piece, is delivery here to stay? Is it here to stay in its current format? Because when we were all walking around Blockbuster, as we got our popcorn and we were going to hire a video and DVD, Netflix was not even on the charts. Sky had probably just about started in its real early days. So let's take that into delivery, Keith.
Then you go back to customer needs, customer behaviour, and people were looking for a bit of an escape. They were after an escape, a movie night, people congregate around, get some food, watch a film. And therefore, that's what the true customer need was, the escapism, the gathering either as a family or friends together or on your own. And you've just made it a lot easier. I mean, Netflix and Disney Plus have made it so much easier, and Amazon. And therefore, the aggregators have made it that much easier. So the occasion is now much easier. Therefore, that's driven the frequency of usage as well.
For delivery. And what's your thought process on dining experience in a restaurant compared to delivery? Do you feel they both have their own space? Because again, myself and Peter have discussed this a lot of times it's the experience. You go to a Hawksmoor, you go to a Dishoom, they are an experience from the moment you walk in. Whereas a QSR operator may be suited better for delivery, that sharing bucket that we've spoke about before.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the customer occasion more than anything else and what's the need.
Yep.
So if you are going out or you're looking for a celebration, I think there's probably limited crossover with delivery. There can be. And if that is what your brand is about, therefore you need to drive in as much elements of that atmosphere as possible, and whether that is the Spotify playlist, whether that is part of the customer doing the final bits of assembly in there, is it elements of much higher packaging, some little treats in there, then that's a different higher push. But if it's pure meal replacement, and we go back to KFC and the bucket, people would go drive-throughs or they'd go to the KFC Express and pick it up and take it home. Now, actually, it's way more convenient and people pay a little bit more for that. So that is the need, meal replacement, mum, dad's night off, or, it's just the convenience of that, or I think probably the brand new sector is friends have just arrived. Are we going out? Are we staying in? That's probably another bit. And I think this is something that the aggregators would have done their segmentation in terms of occasions as well. And so I think it's different things for different people.
Yes.
But when you are a restaurant, when QSR or casual dining, two different executions, aren't they? And you've got to make sure one doesn't impact the other.
I think what you're highlighting, at least for me, is the fact that the customer has been drawn much more into the equation. And that might sound weird because without the customer, you don't have any business. But in the early days, and I'm summarizing what you said, it was all about the operator trying to make sure that the customer knew what to do and how to contact you, and were they doing it enough times. And what you're describing now is the customer is where the opportunity is. Understanding the customer has become much more sophisticated, and the ability to understand the customers become more sophisticated, and the ability to satisfy the customers be more sophisticated. So a major change is how the customer has actually changed, because 20 years ago, 15 years ago, customers didn't do delivery as a matter of course. It was a special thing. Now, increasing numbers just do it.
And that's where the more frictionless, the easier it is. That's been a really great driver of frequency.
And is that down to the delivery companies? Is it the platforms who have driven that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it also gets into human behavior as well. The more you do something, it becomes a behavior. And so therefore, in the early days of getting you on signing up to an app, you will be nudged and encouraged because they know everyone knows if you do something for 28 days, it's an absolute habit. You're never going to change from that. And therefore, the same is applied in terms of, trying to get you to use, the offers to try and encourage the usage. And the more you use it, actually, the less difficult it is. It becomes stickier with you as a customer because now it's so much easier. It's so much more seamless. I know what to do. I've tried this. It was good. I've tried that, and it was good. And everyone's up their game. You've had sessions talking about packaging, and we had lots of discussions and improved, how you carry the fries, the chips, the vented and, the burger boxes and all. Everyone has upped their game because now the consumer has way more trust because the food, when we talk about convenience, speed, value, everyone tends to deliver that now because the aggregators are helping everyone up their game.
So the aggregators have not changed the rules because the rules are always there. They're just waiting to be discovered. But the aggregators have changed the scene. Consumers have reacted by buying more delivered from apps and websites and so on. And operators have therefore changed what they do in order to meet it. So it's that type of activity rather than being driven by the restaurants. It's being hugely encouraged by the delivery apps.
Yes, because there was a customer need that was there. They've just made it much, much easier to do. They've got customers hooked on it, and it's great. And now actually some of that then becomes problematic now for restaurants because, hold on, I've got a lot of delivery. I've got my dine-in. What's happening here? And now you've got two different business models impacting and potentially one impacting on the other. And I think that's probably, as operators, obviously everyone is battling with this. Our example was when I brought Marugame Udon from Japan over to the UK and then into Europe as the plan. It was, going over, seeing the concept, needed to get some adaptations, and then asking the team there, well, how do you do takeaway? How do you do delivery? And of course, in Japan, takeaway is that nobody takes food down the street and eats it because it's considered offensive and rude, and a very society that follows the rules, and delivery didn't really exist. So what we did is we created, and this is the beauty of when you start afresh, of course, it's a restaurant, it's more fast casual on one side. So we made sure we had separate entrances for the delivery drivers, water fountains for the drivers as well, make it as easy as possible for them because they are an extension of your team. You're entrusting them to take your product, making sure that packaging was absolutely right. But also that made sure that they weren't bumping the customers that were dining in. And also we made sure from a capacity point of view, we did a whole piece of work of for each piece of equipment, how much capacity can you get out there? So we ended up with two lines. So one would not impact the other. So therefore, one line dealt with takeaway, click and collect, kiosks, etc., anything that was going out the line there, and another line that went for all customers coming down the line and dining in. Now, we had the advantage of created from the start point, and then that created a great template that then, as obviously pandemic kicked off, helped Japan, where they have almost 1,000 units, and it sort of really helped them sort of lean into delivery and lean into takeaway as well. So we're really pleased about the learnings we applied there, and got some really good results on that as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? And just to summarise all of that we've just been, it's evolution, isn't it? Is the way to really describe of what's happened from your days at GBK to Udon, doing what you do for, let's take the driver to start with. We've all sat in restaurants in the early days of delivery where the reception or waiting area or bar would be full of guys with rucksacks on, ready to collect their food ordered to take. And from what you said, Keith, is a separate entrance, but not just a separate entrance, a separate line. Engaging those drivers as part of your team, water, they could go in somewhere that's heated in the winter. And so you incorporate them into the team. The same with Deliveroo and Uber and Just Eat is those guys wouldn't have got to where they've got to today without technology.
Yep.
And the evolution of a smartphone, a device.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is walk in people's shoes. Walk in the customer, understand their needs. Walk in the shoes of the delivery driver who really just wants to drop multiple, want to get as many deliveries in per hour because that's how I'm remunerated. Yes, I want to do a good job, of course, but actually also wants to be treated with respect. And that's important as well. Therefore, your own team, again, you've got to walk in the shoes of your team to make it as easy as possible for them to do a great job. So I always think about it as people, processes, systems. Make sure that you have everything so it's really easy for the restaurant to operate really well delivery and really well dining. They are two businesses.
Yeah.
And they have different metrics, but you've got to make sure you put the right resource on there. So we often used, at certain peak times, if you have two lines, you don't need them open all the time, but you turn them on at the right time. So we're bringing stint workers at certain times to manage the super peaks that will make it much easier. So no one feels like, I've got a really tough. Actually, if you've got a good job with the right resources, then you can deliver something really good.
And more, you speak to a lot of people in the industry, Keith, and you're very well known. Do you talk to people around this? Because what was that step change almost from going to picking up from a restaurant to it being the dual model that you're talking about there? Because Popeyes are really good at it as well.
If you start from a clean sheet of paper, you can design this.
Of
so
course.
You're blessed, in that you don't have the legacy. If you've got inline units, it's going to be really difficult because how are you going to put in a new door, etc.? How are you going to... So we had the luxury.
But also the looking forwards as well.
But also we did the work, so understand what was your throughput on each bit of equipment. Where do you need to double up? So we knew we could do 200 transactions per hour or bowls going on the delivery line, and we knew we could do 200 transactions on the dine-in. And what we didn't know is that the Udon boiler could do 400 transactions. So that fed two lines. So, it's in the detail. You've got to put the work in to really understand it. And then if you've done all that, then it makes it a much better machine, spirited with the team to deliver something great.
Where, Keith, do you feel then delivery is going to go? Look where it's gone since you first said, when was it, 94?
Yeah, 93, 94,
we're now
90, I think.
We're now in 2024, Mr. Backman. I'm going to put you on the spot, Keith.
Where's 2025?
Well, that's true. I've got a month. Where's delivery going? What's the next big bang for delivery or restaurants?
I think you've just got to go back to the customer, their needs, and see how that is, and look at, are there any technology or things that make it easier. So if you go back to the need is, it's a meal replacement, it's ease, I'm going to watch Netflix. And so actually what people are looking for, convenience, speed and value. Well, in one sense, you could, and you see this in central Milton Keynes, the little drone things that are going along, driving along the road and delivering, flying. People are doing lots of experiments on that. People think that's never going to happen. But sometimes what happens is we often overestimate what will happen in the short term, and we underestimate what happens in the long term. So if you look at how many meals are eaten out of home, or you say if you called eating out and delivery as non-prepped foods, actually that's a massive change that's taken place over the last 30 years. Now, maybe not all of that's good because you want to make sure, no ultra-processed foods, but ultimately there is a massive change because consumers were after convenience, speed, and value. So does that mean that retail brands are in retail and brands retail offering is much easier into the air fryer or whatever mechanism or new cooking methods that might come up that make it a very different proposition? I don't know. You probably want a futurologist to be able to do that. But go back to the customer behavior and the customer. And customers love brands because they connect. And so if you can do that, then I think that's the really important thing.
Build on what you said before, and I'm simplifying. You've said that consumers have become the crucial element in the whole thing. Operations are incredibly important to make sure that the customer is satisfied and that the delivery, and I use that in the widest sense, is done correctly. And all of that has been driven by the apps. So consumers' operations, which is restaurants or ghost kitchens or whatever, and apps, all working together to drive this forward. Looking into the future, it seems to me, and taking your point about, well, you're fine looking at the short term, but the longer term is sort of beyond human capacity to contemplate. Are there people who have got a view of the future? Yes, I'm sure. Well, yes, there are lots of people. How many of them have got the correct view? Probably very few. And how many of those are going to be able to implement it effectively? Even fewer. So the future may be driven by one person in delivery, or it may be just a combination of multiple little changes occurring within the consumer operations and app ecosystem. So I think the future, whilst we might have a view about the general shape of it, if we're going to say what we're going to be in 10 years' time, it's probably beyond us. Am I right or am I wrong? Are you going to tell us and we'll come back in 10 years and see that you're right?
I'll take the date, but I think if we take it to its most simplest thing is take it back to the customer and what their needs are. And can you find a way of profitably matching those needs? So actually the whole rise of aggregators is they've captured the customer, they've increased the number of eyeballs, and they've built up trust. And trust is where they've helped some of the restaurant brands get better, because if you don't get a score, and brands are promises delivered, and the aggregators are promising that, you can get something convenient, fast, and good value. And the customers respond to that saying, actually, I like that. I'll have more of that. And now I'll find more occasions to use you. And that has been the thing that's driven the frequency. Now the operators need to make sure that they can deliver that convenience, speed, and value so that we can get as high a share as possible.
So the future belongs to the consumer. I like that.
Yeah, because, you sort of think, that we're humans. We love to gather. Sometimes we gather at home with friends. Sometimes we're on our own. But the need is, family, not going to cook tonight, or with friends, or we're going out. But that starts with the need.
So time is running away from us, I'm afraid. It's a fascinating discussion.
Definitely. Before you run away, though, Peter, I just wrote a couple of notes when Keith was talking around the evolution. 10 years' time, he's going to meet us here for a beer at Waterloo. But also, I've wrote down money. Money's really important because none of these are going to do it without making money. That's the crux of everything. Yeah, any business. So how long, we've spoke off air lots of times about DoorDash. You're a big fan of DoorDash, and let's see what happens there. But it's around money, isn't it? It's also a big part.
Yep, money makes the world go round. So, Keith, is there anything that you feel that you want to say that we haven't covered yet?
I think just reiterating, just making sure we are obsessed with the consumer, the customer, and brands is where it happens, because actually brands are trust. And so therefore, can you deliver what you promise? So many of our restaurants offer fabulous food, actually, but there's such a difference between in restaurant and at home. And at home is obviously a really strong growth market. We need to make sure we're at our best, and almost like a Formula One. You know, you're constantly looking at all those little bits, whether it's your in-store prep time, whether it's your missing items, all that sort of obsession of getting our sort of engineers to help deliver that promise of the perfect meal at home. And customers' expectations, yes, are going up, but actually the reward of delivering that is that they come back more often. There's a whole other piece about how do you own that customer relationship as well, which is, you know,
That's the subject for another day.
another time.
So
Definitely.
Which I would always want to have.
great. Okay. Well,
Interesting.
we'll have it,
Really
we'll have it.
interesting.
And we're looking forward to our 10th anniversary episode as well.
As Arnie says, I'll be back.
Keith, if people want to contact you, how can they do that?
I think LinkedIn, I'm there.
Okay, great. So a big thank you to our fantastic guest, Keith Bird, for taking time out of your busy schedule to us today. And another thank you this time to Avico Super Crunch, the ultimate fries for delivery, without whose enthusiastic support this show wouldn't get on the air. And here's a reminder that whether you're a delivery company, a marketplace app, a technology company, a restaurant owner, an investor, or simply someone who loves to order takeout, the Delivery Profits is the perfect way to stay informed and ahead of the curve in the world of food delivery. You'll find the Delivery Profits on Spotify, Apple, or on the other places where you normally get your podcasts. And please, again, support the show by leaving a 5-star rating. Your ratings and reviews help more people discover our content. And there's more at www.thedelivery.world/The Delivery Profits. Tune in to the next edition of The Delivery Profits for the insights, interviews, and analysis that will keep you ahead of the game in this exciting and ever-evolving industry. And with that, it's goodbye from today's Delivery Profits. That's Keith and John and me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.